Toastmasters and guests. I hope you remember Anna Akhmatova's words, that there are faces like glorious portals. But there are faces that can easily be lost in the crowd. The story is about that. One Friday, it was, I suppose, in August, me and our dog rushed to the railway station to meet my husband and my son. It was our tradition, it has always been that way. At an appointed hour, the train arrived, and typical Russian or other Soviet garden planters floated out of the train en masse, wearing usual things, wearing raincoats, rubber boots, and wearing some tools for them, all parts and parcels. My husband and my son appeared. Their faces could easily be lost to the crowd. But quite of a sudden, their appearance something special. He floated from the electric train like an admiral yacht, all in chalk white suit, with long white shoulder-like long hair. Absolutely aristocratic, certainly. It couldn't help attracting everybody's attention. What that may be, Dorian Gray or something. The only thing he lacked really was walking stick. And people were so much amazed and maybe frightened inside, and it was typical Russian, deeply rooted suspicion of that kind of personalities. They passed us rubbernecking, and with their eyes rounded in two circles. We hurried to our dacha on tour, not to be laughed at least pointed fingers at us. At last we came. It was a very charming walk. But when we entered, the very moment we entered our dacha, the electricity went off. It all very often happens on Fridays because too much pressure at a time. And what's to be done? But our oil lamps and candles were always at hand. I'd like to remind you it was early 90s, it's not present day. So our guest, who was an American film producer, was very much surprised at one thing, but pleased to the utmost. Well, let's live without electricity. It's so popular and modern now in Britain to save nature around here. And his face should be seen to be believed, because it was typical English, aristocratic, with long jaw, long face, very clever indeed, and the way he spoke English, it was royal, aristocratic. The next moment, he and we both of us entered the room, and he stole a stove. It was like that. He looked at it with surprise, asking, "What's that for?" I described being very proud of this thing, saying that it's our godsend. It warms us in cold days. We make food there inside, really very tasty food. And you can see it watching gleaming flames. And by the way, you can use cinder as a fertilizer after that. So Master Betty said, "Let's make dinner." And asked her permission to set the fire. To which I said, "I agree. I'll show you how things to be done. But for that, you should change, because you set fire in that white suit, you may imagine." And my husband gave him his old sport jeans in local Russian, which is called Trinity. And we offered him typical Russian overcoat, cotton, in local Russian, which is called Vatnik. His happiness has no bounds. And he took his camera every second. And I imagine New York film producer seeing and watching those pictures of this tribal life. Then we made food. It was very tasty. We spent a wonderful night outside. But even in his Vatnik, he was so aristocratic. When he spoke, he used aristocracy and elegance, even in that. Let's have a look. This was standing around the fire, enjoying our life to the utmost. But the last, not the least, attraction of this evening was when he was sitting up somewhere in his white suit. But the next day came another round of attractions and another of troubles. We set for the local shop to buy some things for him, because he asked us about that. And what we saw there, it cannot be described without tears. It was a shabby barn with very far from being aristocratic and very inviting inscription on it, wine. And elderly drunkards, local drunkards, sitting around the pond, enjoying their life, sitting in trees and fishing. When they saw this gentleman in white suit taking his camera, their deeply rooted suspicion arose, and they started grouping. And to avoid, I would rather say, slap-bang confrontation, we rushed to the barn with that very inviting inscription, wine. And what's to be followed, I would rather say, as they say in the films, to be continued.